Hi everyone, welcome to Read a Kitab, and we are so excited today to have, to be celebrating the Pride Month, and I have an extremely important person over here with me today, with whom I'm going to talk. So I'm going to invite Farhad, who is also the author of this book, The Other Man, and I'm so looking forward to kind of having this conversation with him. We all know, hi everybody, hi who's joined us. Finding me, I'm Progress. Hi Invincible Leo, hi, and hi Charlene. And I think it is extremely important that we talk about Pride literature, also celebrating that today, since it's the Pride month. Who are going to be a part of this live today with me. Allow me a moment, and I will just add them. And then we are also going to meet Farhad. Hi, Abhishek. How are you?
Hi, so good to see you, Ekta. Happy Pride
So good to
Month.
see. Happy Pride Month. So good to see you too. I'm just waiting for Neeraj also to join us so that we can. I'll just ask him. Okay, to join. I'll send him a request. But hi everyone, and once again, welcome to Read a Kitab, and so glad to have all of you here doing these author sessions again. And we're going to have Farhad today for this live session wherein we are going to celebrate Pride Month and the literature, the queer literature. And I think there is so much, that the queer literature has to offer, and it is also breaking a lot of myths, breaking boundaries, rising high above, and how important it is, in today's time to read, literature from the community. So we thought, what would be a better, month than doing this? What do you say, Abhishek?
Yes, absolutely. I think it's so important. It's just being Pride Month. I think it's such a great initiative by Read a Kitab to pick and celebrate queer literature and queer authors, and and it's even amazing that we are having a queer author amongst us today for this Insta Live. How great is that?
Absolutely. Hi, Neeraj.
Hi,
So glad to
Neeraj.
have you here.
Hi, Ekta. Hi, Abhishek. Good to see you all.
Good to see
Lovely
you.
to be part of
Yeah.
this discussion. So looking forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely, and very delighted actually. So we are just waiting for the author to join us so that we can start today's discussion. And I know it is an important discussion, not just because it is Pride Month and we are talking to an author who's written a book on the gay literature or the queer literature, but I think it is equally important because we need to address issues which need a voice, and we also need to hear from people who understand it from the community. And since Reader Kitab has always been very vocal about supporting and inclusivity, and also kind of supporting diversity, and always been a part of, we always identify people as readers. That is what we always talk about, rather than so it's a no label club, and so we always talk about that. We're just waiting for Farhad to join us, but in the
I think he's
meanwhile, Neeraj,
there.
yeah, is he there? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just going to send him an invite. Hi everyone. Okay, let me just invite Farhad, for who we all have been waiting, and we are passing out this time to do some commentary. But yeah, okay. All right. I've just sent him an invite. Hope he accepts it and is able
Oh,
to.
yeah.
Oh, hi
Ah,
Farhad, how are
I was
you?
watching you all. I was waiting.
Hi, how are
Happy,
you?
listen, happy Pride to everyone, firstly, and happy 2 years to all of you all. That's a
Happy
big
Pride to
thing.
you
You all
too.
have grown up now as a book club.
Yay. So perhaps before we start, I have just a small request to make. I think if you can shift towards your, I think that would be your right or my right, or somewhere in the middle of the screen, because I think your Left profile. Yes, yes. Perfect, perfect. Yes.
Okay.
I didn't want you to tell me later that Ekta, you didn't tell me, and people only see
Listen,
all of
I'm
you
always
and
on the
only
right
half of
side. Yeah.
So we are extremely happy, Farhad, to have you today at Reader Kitab
Same here.
today. We were just talking about, how the club always talks about no labels and inclusivity, and we've been always been very vocal and supportive about it. And we are so glad to be supporting, everybody from the community and also being a part of the community as allies. And also talking about this book that Farhad has written, The Other Man. So we have some interesting
Okay.
conversation. Oh, wow. This asks for a screenshot. let me take one.
Oh my God. No, wait
Okay.
for my this. Let me put it on my
You put it
Kindle.
on your
Okay.
Kindle. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So thank you everyone for joining us, and we had a lot of chit chat. We are going to get some serious, fantastic Abhishek, and so yeah, Farhad, just to begin with, to just easen out, how has been your experience in in this month? Let's start that way. How has been your experience for the Pride Month? What are your
You
takeaways?
know,
What are your expectations and everything?
I feel that every year Pride is celebrated even bigger and even better. I remember last year going for one of those carnivals where they sell a lot of things happening at Soho House. And I didn't know about it. I went to meet somebody out there, and frankly, this was going on, and I was really surprised. And I was like, that's wow. And there were so many things. There's a photographer, a woman who was shooting nude women, which I thought was pretty gutsy because, that can lead to a lot of issues usually. There were lots of people selling stuff and stuff like that. This year, again, I think there's been a lot of like hoopla about it, which is great. But we also have to be careful about rainbow washing, which is a lot of companies who want to just sort of tag on and sort of be, queer friendly when they're not really, So we have to keep that
Absolutely.
in mind. I mean, there's a big backlash abroad happening.
Yeah.
Target put out some stuff and then they had to put it away. And even some of the bookstores have not been able to put out, Pride displays. So I don't think it's only happening in India, the stuff that we see, it's happening around the world. But let's focus on the positive. And I think it's great. You see so much more. I mean, I think since 77 was knocked down, 377 was knocked down, I think there's just been a lot more. There's been a lot more writing. There's been a lot more literature. Kashish is such a big deal, as a film festival, which is great. Even this year, it had a huge response. So there's so much happening, which is nice. I mean, it's our month. It's everybody's month, It's just a month to celebrate, I
Absolutely.
feel.
Fantastic. So, Farhad, we were kind of, also talking about, since we are talking about this month, and how could we, not talk about the literature and the impact that, this literature is making in the society and how important it is. Let us just, kind of break the ice by just understanding from you how has been your writing process when we talk about, this particular book, and what was your thought process, when you were thinking of writing a book on, on the subject?
So, I pitched this book to my agent. Now it must be 10 years ago. Okay. That was a long time ago. And when I spoke to her, all I told her was that it's a gay romance between an older Indian guy who, who's sort of good looking, rich, successful, the perfect GQ guy in some sense, who everybody wants to bag essentially, that sort of guy. And he falls in love with this Firang who's visiting the city, a much younger Firang guy. And that was just actually the basis of the story. And then I brought into the fact, something that I really feel is being swept under the carpet and not spoken about enough is how gay men are pushed into marriages by their parents, arranged marriages. I know so many guys in that situation. Some have gotten out of it, some are still in it, some have dealt with it. And it leaves everybody scarred. Nobody's happy because the wife knows something's off, right? I mean, he's not really behaving the way he should be. He's never happy because he can't be with his true love in some sense. And the parents are never happy because the kids aren't happy.
Absolutely.
So that was something I really wanted to focus on. And the other thing I wanted to focus on in this book was just sort of what we call today queer joy. I've read so many books with queer trauma, that you're
Yeah.
weeping into your tissue box over this,
Oh my God.
all the time. I mean, all the time,
Oh
somebody's
God, yeah.
dying. Yeah. Or your heart is ripped out. I mean, what the hell? I mean, we have pretty good lives. I mean, it's not that when we're dating or we're seeing somebody, there are lots of great moments, right? Till it ends, of course. But before that, it's a lot of good stuff, So, I mean, I was just like, why not just have a really positive, uplifting book? Why is there this subliminal message that if you're gay, you're going to be sad, you're going to, have bad things happen to you? That's not true. There's a lot of good stuff out there. So why not focus on that good stuff? So those were the elements that came in afterwards. But that was 8 years ago when I spoke to her. I only worked on it, a couple of years ago. I mean, it took 2 years to write, and then it takes a year to publish. So it was a long process, but it's been a really satisfying process.
Amazing.
Can you
I'm
hear
sure
me
both
clearly?
the boys
Am I
are
clear
waiting for
on?
me. Sorry.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm sure both the boys are waiting for me to stop
Finish
so that
off.
they can, kind of
Jump
ask
in.
their questions. So I'll just take a pause.
Go for
Hi,
it. Come on.
hi, Farhad. Abhishek here.
Hi.
What you were just saying, that's like half of what Grindr is all about right now, I think. Uh, Gay men married to women and still finding partners on Grindr. But the great thing, you were nominated for the Lambda Literary Award.
Yeah.
What an honor. So when you were writing this, were you even thinking about that you're going to get such a prestigious nomination?
Not in
Or you're
the
going to be
least.
no...
Not in the least. Honestly, when you're writing it, you're just like, a lot of people ask me about writing a book and advice on it and stuff like that. And I always tell them the first thing you need to do is just write the damn book. Don't go around talking to people about it. Don't go around telling your friends I'm writing a book and not doing anything about it. So that's what I was just focused on. I was just focused on writing it. I had no idea, Abhishek, whether it would be published internationally or just in India at that time. I had no idea about a lot of things. I just wrote it. And the interesting thing about that is that when 377 was knocked down, the book was already written and with my agent. So that's when so the book was written because it was at that time, it was quite a while ago. And so it was written. And then the day it happened, I called her. She was like one of the first few people I called because she's in America. And so I had to call her a little later. And I said, listen, this is what's happened. And she's like, oh my God. I was like, yeah. I was like, this is going to be the start of a new India. And we need to put this in the book much more. It was there in the background. So then the whole thing was reworked to make it a much stronger voice in terms of it's basically based in the year leading up to 377 being knocked down, and then that became sort of this background score in the book, which was not initially there, because we didn't know, right? We were cautiously optimistic that it would happen, right? Just like with same-sex marriages, we're cautiously optimistic.
Cautiously.
And just like the main character also, he's also very cautiously optimistic.
Exactly.
And I was going to ask you this question about the section 377 because it's not just in the background, it is in the foreground, and it actually changes a lot of decision that a lot of characters are taking in this. So I don't want to spoil it for everyone. I really want people to read it. So I was kind of trying to understand this, did it completely change the narrative plot that you had, or you just had to tweak it here and there?
No, I had to tweak it here and there because it was already there in the book, but it hadn't changed that drastically. But all the decisions that were going to be taken were going to be taken. It's just that, it sort of like got broadened a lot more, and it reached a lot more importance. And I really felt at that point, on that day, when, a lot of people called up and, said, great, congrats and stuff like that. And a friend of mine asked me and said that, so what does it feel like? You've led a pretty easy life. So it's not that it's really greatly impacted you. So what do you really feel? And I just said that, it just puts us all on the same pedestal now. That's what it really does. Earlier it was not like that, So that's sort of bringing that aspect out in the book. And it does influence, you're completely right. It is in the foreground because it influences a lot of decisions and stuff like that. But a lot of that was brought in much more later, which was like a couple of months, just work of a couple of months to bring it out. And I think that was needed. I mean, it would be a travesty if that book came out and then 377 was knocked down. I would be like, if it got published and then I was just like, no, so it all fell into great timing. And it just, honestly, it just worked so beautifully, And also, I'll tell you something, writing a book is one thing, but you need a really good team of people backing you. I had a great editor. I have a great agent. I had a publishing house that really believed in this Indian novel. I mean, at the end of the day, we're like a blip on the radar of literature in the world, however much we might think so. But India is still like getting there. I mean, I'll tell you something. The month that my book came out in America, there were 100 other LGBT books that came out. Just that 1 month in October. In not even 2 years do we have 100 books coming out here. So, you can see the parallels of how that needs to change, how we need more queer literature of our own. We need more stories of our own,
Right.
I mean, it's fine reading about stories set in New York and London and written really well. And I've loved those too, But I mean, now things are changing. Let's talk about what our issues are. Like, what are our problems,
I just have a follow-up question to this 377. So do you think since it has been taken off, you found a new voice, a new freedom in your writing, or the way you're imagining how you're going to write further from here on?
No, but I think it's just open things for everybody. You see a lot more literature now. My first novel was also a gay novel, but it was a coming of age novel. And at that time when it came out, which is again now 12 years ago, maybe 10, 12 years ago, we couldn't say it was a gay novel, because at that time, nobody even used the term LGBT. You know what I mean? At that time, you said homosexual man. You didn't even say gay man. You know what I mean? Those were different days. The books also that were there in bookshops, if you went asking for like first of all, it would be so hard to say, listen, I want a gay book. Okay, I think in those days it was so you have to say, I want that kind of book or whatever. And then you're sort of led to the erotica section. That's where they would be. So I think things. I think things have changed today, and I think 377 being knocked down is definitely open. We've had so many more books, right? We've had O'Neill's book. We've had Nickel Out Loud. There have been several more books over these last couple of years, and I think it's increasing. I think publishers are more open to it, but there still needs to be a bigger push,
Yes.
We need more readers. We really need, internationally, they download on their Kindle, so it's much cheaper, it's much easier. That has still not picked up here so much, If that did, I think that would really revolutionize things, because we need a strong readership base, which will lead to, lit festivals having more talks. They need to have more talks, more panels, more queer. Very few of them do that, very few of them, not a lot of them. And if publishers see that, they'll be like, listen, yes, let's publish more. Let's make this a broader segment. It's still niche, but it's becoming broader. I mean, I definitely think it's becoming wider. There is a lot more interest.
So, if I may ask over here, we are talking about the readership. So, did you have any particular readership in mind when you were writing your novel? That is one question. And about the writing style and the structure of the book also, because I could see that was a clear structure. Whenever some of the characters, they were like pushed to the background, they just went to the last, towards the end of the chapter. And, there were a lot of text and everything, just to change the narrative style. So, I just wanted to talk about that as well.
So, first thing was about readership, right? So when I'm writing it, I don't think about my readership at all. Of course, I'm writing it for the queer community. That's a given. That's sort of understood in my head. But besides that, honestly, when you realize all these things is when you give your book to a publishing house, they make you fill in these forms, and they ask you at that time, who do you think your readership is? And that's when you really sit and think, who is my readership? Yeah. But the interesting thing is a book like this, one is that there hadn't been a gay rom-com from India published internationally. So when they asked me, like, what do you compare your book to? I was like, there's no comparison I can give because there hasn't been another book like this, you know? So you realize all these things only much later after writing the book. You know, if you start thinking about these things when you're writing the book, you'll never write the book.
True.
I would literally say that just concentrate on finishing that book. Then all these questions come in about who's your readership. In this case, the readership stretches. I would say I've had 21-year-olds loving it. And I've had somebody's mother who read it and said it was great, you know? So it's a stretch because there's also the parental acceptance that's part of the book. Parents play a large part in this whole book and things like that. So there's a lot. Your second question was about the style, right? In terms of the style, I mean, what I generally do is when I sit down to write a book, I don't do A to B, B to C, C to D sort of thing. I don't do a spreadsheet. I just make a large synopsis of around 1,000 words. What are the characters, how they interact with each other, what's happening, what's the main story. And then I sort of paint it in like a canvas, so it's a lot more fun that way. I'm not a regimental person. I can't do that thing of wake up at 9 o'clock and go to bed at 11 o'clock. I can't do that. So I couldn't even do that in my writing. Some days you don't feel like writing.
Unlike
some days you're like, just
your main character.
Yeah, exactly. And even the thing of being a workaholic, I mean, that's so common amongst gay men, right? We become workaholics because we don't have much else otherwise. If you're not seeing somebody, if you're single, and you know what the scene is pretty much like when you're single with the apps, you decide the best thing you can do is work, or read a book or work, So, I mean, that was the style I follow. It works for me. It changes a lot. Like, I'm working on a new book. I have no idea how it's going to end. I know what the ending is going to be, but I have no idea how it's going to happen.
Awesome.
I'll climb that mountain when I reach it. You know what I mean? So that's how I look at it, basically. Like, not too planned, not too precise. Things can change, all of that sort of stuff.
And that is how I think writing should be, because I mean, a writer can live so many lives and basically can conjure up scenarios and on the fly. And I think that's the beauty of writing. If everything is I'm not sure, but a lot of writers do plan everything and they write
they
it.
do.
But I think what comes spontaneously has a different kind of enigma to it.
Definitely. And I mean, that's where the plot twists come in, right? I mean, you never thought of something. It really helps because sometimes you read something in a newspaper or you hear about something and suddenly you say, listen, I want to include this. I write basically based on what I see around me, what I hear around me, what I've read around me, and sort of bringing that into my work. So that really helps. Sometimes you come across stuff and you say, you know what, this fits in really well. Why don't I adapt this to the book? And that's how it goes.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Neeraj, you want to ask something?
No, so I was just going to say that, here at Reader Kitab, we are also champions for some, uncomfortable questions. So I was just trying to, understand, since you said that you write whatever you have observed. I mean, obviously an author is an, amalgamation of whatever they see around them. Did you ever for a second feel that, all of your characters necessarily have to come from like very elitist or from a very rich background? Because I also remember Hanya Yana Gihara, in one of her interviews, she said that all of her main characters, they either have to come from a very affluential background, or they have to be in a career where they actually can survive New York City, so to say. Otherwise, their entire thing would be spent into healthcare, and there would be no story. So I was kind of wondering whether this was also conscious decision.
Listen, firstly, I love Hanya Yana Gihara. Like, I think you all know that A Little Life is sort of like one of my favorite books and stuff like that. But yeah, I definitely wanted to set it in this affluent world because that was the world I've seen. That's the world I've seen as a journalist. I've been an entertainment and lifestyle journalist. That's the world I've seen. That's the world I sort of see around me. And you know what? What the hell? Bombay is like a 24-hour, city. Like, why do we always have this poverty porn that's associated with India when writers write about it? you know, like all those photographs of a cow next to a
Cow.
Mercedes and things like, yeah, you know, like why? I mean, this is Bombay as a city has some of the richest people living here. We have Bollywood stars, we have politicians, etc., etc. Why not focus on that richness of the city? So that was a completely definite decision. It wasn't something that just happened. That was the place. And I'll tell you something also. What I wanted to point out with it is that a lot of people think that if you're rich and you're gay, it's easier to come out of the closet. It's not. You know, it makes no difference what your background is. It makes no difference how much money you have. It's as difficult for everybody, you know, whether you're in India or internationally. So that was another aspect I wanted to bring in. You know, so there were a bunch of things that came, but it was definitely a well thought out decision. There was no doubt about that.
And you know, Farhad, actually, this is something that really kind of, while all of us were reading your book, we discussed on this particular thing because, you know, like we initially mentioned that all the books that you read, which come from the queer community, are basically all sob stories wherein you feel that, you know, everything is kind of very sad and but you know, this comes as a fresh breeze wherein, you know, you also realize that it's, you know, there are other people also who come from a different society, different backgrounds, different standards, but the ultimate reality that they belong to the community, they, you know, like in this case Ved, and they are facing the same trouble. They are under the same problem. It's not that, you know, if you come from an affluent family, you are extremely rich, you have everything, you know, on the platter, so things get easier for you. And that also makes me you know, kind of ask you this question that, you know, when we talk about such things, that it is not easy for anyone, and it doesn't matter from which background you come, but this is such a big reality that we want people to accept. And you know, still a very large part of the world, I would not say just India, but a very large part of the world is still not ready to accept it, you know, wholeheartedly. So, you know, books like these, the one that you had written, there are a lot of other Indian authors as well, and, you know, foreign authors, like you talked about, a lot of LGBTQ literature is coming out. What is your view on, you know, how it is kind of opening avenues, you know, for the community, for the people to actually be vocal about it, you to come out of the closet, and, you know, to think that, yes, you know, maybe they read the literature and they feel, yes, how important it is, and these are the why not, you know, something like this. So basically, what do you think that, you know, how a member writing, you know, from the community about the queer literature, the challenges they have faced or they have seen around, how that is opening avenues for the people in the community?
I mean, it's a great form of self-expression, right? And that's so needed. I think everybody wants to express themselves, whether through poetry, whether through writing, whether through making a movie. Everybody has some creativity in them. Whether they act on it or not is a different thing altogether. You know, I think it's opened up avenues, as in, like I said, we've had a lot more literature coming out since 377 was knocked down.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to increase. I think we're definitely going to see a lot more queer novels. But I just hope we see a lot more uplifting, positive queer novels as well. You know, it's fine. I mean, I also read all these tragic novels and, you know, cry into my tissue box later and all of that stuff, and that's fine. But I also feel it's nice to have books which just make you feel good at the end of the day. You know, why not? I mean, why don't we have more of that? You know, so I think that's going to change. Yeah.
And you know, talking about the title also, I wanted to take a moment. And when I picked up the book, and I was like, the other man, I was like, oh, am I in for a snob this thing here? I mean, am I going to cry? And I'm always looking at you know, forward to when the author is going to use the title in their book, and you have actually used it towards the very end, and I was like, oh, I didn't see this coming. So if you can talk about the title as well.
Oh, so, you know, the title was something I decided on literally at the beginning of the book.
All right.
Okay. I had thought about the other man because for years we've heard about the other woman, right? The woman that the husband has an affair with and breaks up the marriage. In this case, it was a guy.
I was scared of that. You know what? Am I going to read this?
Yeah, did you keep your tissue box ready? Jackson's tissue box.
Now it's coming. Now it's coming. It's never coming.
Yeah,
it's nothing like that.
It is. I mean, there were some tragic elements to it. I mean, there were some issues, of course, that were dealt with it. But I didn't want it to be one of those because I've read those books and I've always felt so terrible at the end of them, you know. It just makes you feel, even movies like Brokeback Mountain or Moonlight or Call Me By Your Name. You know what I mean? Why is nothing ever happy? I mean, hello. I mean, we have great lives also. We have great times, you know. So why not? You know, why not also have that in? So on the title, you know, somebody gave me a very interesting explanation. My idea was, of course, the other man being as the other woman, you know, like sort of a cheeky twist on the whole other woman sort of aspect and the other man. But somebody else who read the book gave me a very interesting interpretation that they felt of the title. And they said, do you think that once he chose to come out, he became the other man? You know? And I thought that was also interesting. I said, "Oh, that's
Fantastic,
great. I'm
yeah.
going to rob that for my own interviews and say that, you know."
And as a matter
But
of fact,
so
yeah, I agree with this because if you look at Wade's trajectory, he's constantly comparing himself with all of the other characters, and he's like, "Am I that other person? Am I that other person?"
yeah. So that was another, and you know, that's what happens with books. Like so many people have said, "Oh, I see a lot of Bollywood elements in it," and I don't watch really Bollywood movies. I see 2 a year or something like that, you know. So what happens with a book is once you write it, it becomes that of the reader. You know, how they see it, how they view it, what they look into it. And it's so interesting to see stuff that you never thought about or you never imagined, you know, and you're just like, yeah, you know, that also works. That's also a great insight. And that could be true, you know.
So, well, Schitt's Creek is one where you see a very happy ending to a gay romance.
Yeah.
I wanted to see like you have this romance with Bombay going on through the book. So, is this romantic love for Bombay going to be there in all your books, or you
Yeah,
consciously decide to feature Bombay as one of the protagonists in your book?
yeah, I mean, you know, it's true. A lot of people have said that they found like, you know, Bombay is like a protagonist in the book. And that's true. I live in Bombay. I've grown up when Mumbai was Bombay, you know, and I love the city. I don't see myself staying anywhere else. You know, my sisters live abroad. I haven't followed them at all. I see myself being here. So I see all my books being set in Bombay. My first one was set in Bombay, second one, and even the third one. So
Oh, wow.
I think it's going to be
Wow.
a running theme of Bombay, you know, Bombay Meri Jaan sort of thing. But
Yeah.
I mean, I do have a love-hate relationship like everybody else. You know, we crib about the traffic, we crib about the pollution, we crib about, you know, this and that. But then there's so much we love also, you know. And
Absolutely.
I just see myself rooted to the city. So that was just a normal thing because I didn't know any other city as well as I knew the city. And that's why it was set in Bombay. You know, that was the reason really.
And you
And
took
we're
us to
so
so many I'm sorry, you took us to so many places. Especially,
Yeah.
I was wondering what, you know, the scene in Toto's garage would look like. That was such a vivid description.
Oh, by the way, you
Because
know what? I have been to Toto's garage.
yeah, of course, it's a great. Toto's Garage was great. It was a great hangout spot. Alibag, I put in also because that's become like, you know, the new sort of jet set for the rich space that's
Yeah.
there,
Right.
you know, like
True.
the
True.
summer
Mm.
houses for people out here.
Yeah.
So there were, and then of course, Bandra plays a big part, you know, a big role in the book also because everything's set out there. And sort of just talking about the city also, right? How, I mean, I've seen the city change. I've seen how these large, shiny constructions have come up everywhere and things like that, and how it's constantly going about, you know. So, sure, I mean, those were just my own observations that I put in, and it's turned out to be interesting, luckily. So that was great,
I,
you know.
I love your references to the old Bombay, actually. You know, that when Wade thinks about how Bombay is changing, it's like almost speaking our minds, you know, like how Bombay was, how it is becoming now. Yeah.
Exactly. And, you know, it is changing and it's still changing, you know. So I think that's going to be a constant of something that's going to be in my book. I think Bombay is definitely going to be a constant feature for sure.
So there is a
Right.
comment, Wandering Book Lover is writing, this is so rightly put. We all see things through a tinted glass of our experiences and perception. All right, a lot of people smiling at what you're saying, Farhad, and I'm sure everybody is looking forward to read your next book. And I also, you know, think that we have kind of kind of increase the readership. I hope the book is still available on Amazon.
Yes, of course. It's guys, rush now, rush now.
And I can actually make people a little jealous by showing that it is an author signed copy.
It's
yeah. So Farhad was talking about people wanting to buy on Kindle. I think it's there. I'm the one with Kindle. Please go get it on Kindle.
Yeah, I mean, I really hope that picks up, because reading on a Kindle is so much cheaper, and I think you end up reading so much more. I am still more traditional. I do buy books, but I'm trying really hard to have that Kindle app on my phone and read through it. And, I'm trying, but I really hope it picks up.
So Farhad, also coming to, the writing as an aspect and as a career, what do you think that, is writing as a full-time career a great idea in today's times? Right from
I'm not to start with. See, honestly, you need to have a day job. And I was told this, with my first book, I was told this with my second book, and I can tell you from experience for sure. You definitely need to have a day job that gives you the space to write maybe on the weekends, or you figure out a schedule or whatever. But I still treat writing books as a hobby and journalism as my profession. I love both of them, and I can never sort of choose between them. Each has its own. And, a lot of people think that it's interrelated. It's really not. Besides the fact that you're writing, they're very two different genres altogether. They're two different professions altogether. But I would definitely say keep your day job till you become the next Salman Rushdie, and then yes, you can make writing, your sole career. I mean, that's my honest advice.
Thank you. I think that's very much needed, because there are a lot of aspirations, dreams that people have, and they think that they can pursue writing as a career. But how difficult it is, rather, let me put it this way, how difficult it is to survive in the industry, and just from the very beginning, just take that up as a career. But Farhad, on a lighter note, wanted to understand and wanted to ask you, which one is your favorite queer literature book, apart from this one?
Yeah, no. So I have a lot of books that have been memorable, and I can't say any one has been better than the other. But I mean, whether it has been The Line of Beauty by Alan Hollinghurst, which was one of the first few books I read, and which won the Booker Prize,
Yes.
the first gay book to win the Booker Prize in its 20-30 years. So you can imagine how long that's been also, That was a great book. There was a great book called Faggots by Larry Kramer, which came out in the late 80s and shocked the world because it was so explicit and at a time when people never wrote about things. There's a really great book of short stories called Quarantine by, I think it's Rahul Mehta, if I'm not mistaken, who wrote this a couple of... So there have been lots of... There's this amazing memoir by Edmund White called My Lives. And I love it because he's divided the chapters in the men that he's dated. So he has my blondes, my shrink, my master, and all the others that go below it. So,
that's a good one.
Yeah, there are lots of inventive books. There are lots of great books. There's lots of great literature out there. And there are a couple of more books for sure. Alan Hollinghurst, all his books, I've read all his books and they're wonderful. So I can't honestly pick one, but I think The Line of Beauty was one of the first few books that really sort of took me. So I would probably pin it on that, from that angle,
Amazing. And so for all the people who are listening to us, there is this bloating of TBR. So Farhad has given a lot of recommendations. I'm sure he's bloated your TBRs, and so much more is kind of going to come up. I think Abhishek and Neeraj, if you have anything to ask Farhad further before I ask more questions.
Yes.
Neeraj, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just taking from, borrowing the question from Ekta, is just your favorite author or book, not necessarily queer. So favorite author or book.
Oh God, that's really simple. Actually, that's not so simple. Who am I kidding? But it's simple to the extent that I'd say Martin Amis is definitely my favorite author, who unfortunately just passed away a couple of weeks ago. but he's fantastic. He was my introduction to sort of literary fiction, and I would say he's my favorite author because I've read all his books, which are over 20 books, and he was a journalist, so he's written a lot of journalism, which is great. And he just writes sentences that sort of fly off the page. I mean, I've not read anyone literally who writes like him. But having said that, he's definitely my favorite author, but I would say my favorite book would be A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara.
Okay.
I'm reading it for the third time, and I'm still finding new meanings and new beauty in this book. For all the darkness that's there, there's a lot of like light also, and it's a beautiful book.
And Farhad, there is a Broadway play that's happening. I'm sure you're aware, in London. While I was there, I couldn't get the tickets, but yeah, I'm just recommending this one to you so you can fly there and have a look.
I know about it. I mean, I'm stalking her literally, on Instagram, so I know about it.
Yeah. So somebody's asking a question, saying that, have you read Shaggy Ben by Douglas Stewart? And if yes, what's your view on that?
No, I haven't. I've heard about it, and even of Young Mungo, which was the second one after that. I haven't got around to that because right now what I'm doing is actually rereading a lot of books from my own collection. I find there's a beauty in rereading certain books. So I just reread American Psycho. And I'll tell you something, books that are very dark, like A Little Life, American Psycho, where there's either extreme violence or extreme abuse or things like that, shock you the first time you read it. So you forget about everything else in the book. You don't realize the beauty that's also there in the other aspects. When you reread it, it changes the whole story for you. You know what I mean? Because you start liking so many other aspects of the book. So I'm rereading a lot of stuff, but no, I haven't read Shaggy as yet, but it is on my TBR for sure.
And oh my God, this is such a wonderful message that you sent across, how important rereading is. And we have been kind of, talking about rereading for so long. And, there are a lot of people who say too many books, too very less time. But I think how important rereading is to, you actually brought in all the aspects, that how you actually look at the nuances, how you understand the book better, and how you feel it absolutely differently. And that makes, rereading absolutely important. I think that's a big takeaway from, Farhad in today's session. Also, Farhad, very quickly, we never realized we are 40 minutes into this discussion, and I think we can talk to you on and on forever.
Okay.
But there are some questions, some rapid fire questions that we want to ask you.
But 1 second, is there a hamper involved? I'm only answering if there's a hamper involved. And I have to get the hamper. That only makes sense to do it. No saying it's a tie and all that nonsense. Like, you have to just give it to me straight away.
We'll send it to you. We'll send the hamper to you.
Go ahead.
But I think when very quickly, who's your favorite author? Though I think we got a hint of it, but still.
Martin Amis for sure.
Awesome. And one book you wish from the queer community that you would have written?
The Line of Beauty. Of course, it's heavily wishful thinking, and it's not even possible. But I mean, it's a beautiful book. I mean, who wouldn't want to write that book? It won the Booker Prize, for God's sake. So, I mean, it's a fantastic book.
And who is Salman Rushdie to you?
So, the thing about Salman Rushdie, it's so interesting, is that I actually started loving his work through his nonfiction, not through his fiction. I enjoy his nonfiction a lot more. And one of, when you're talking about favorite books, one of his book, his memoir, Joseph Anton, which is actually the name he used as an alias during the years of the Fatwa, which is Joseph Conrad and Anton Chekhov, the two authors he put together.
Right.
That memoir is so fantastic. Again, I've read it twice and I love it. And I'm probably going to read it again. I know that it's just such a strong fight for truth. It fights for the power of truth. And so he came to me through his nonfiction, and I love his nonfiction. I haven't read too much of his fiction. I've read a couple of them, but his nonfiction is just fantastic.
Thank you. And also, any one book that you would want to recommend the club members of Reader Kitab to go through and read?
So another author who I love is Bret Easton Ellis, who writes these again, he sets his world is sort of like sex, drugs, and rock and roll, rich kids, rich, good-looking people, but there's also extreme violence in it, which is sometimes almost satirical. He's always said that they're fantasy novels. You're not supposed to take them seriously. But I read his new book called The Shards recently, and it was fantastic. He's not an author for everybody. You need a strong stomach to go through his stuff. But if you do have it, it's he's fantastic. He just has. I'm drawn to authors who are stylists. For me, the style of writing, the sentences, that's what draws me to a book. It's not so much about how well developed the character is or what the plot is. Those are all secondary concerns to me. When I'm reading a book, for me, it's the style that really matters. And he's, again, a fantastic stylist, So I would say him for sure.
Absolutely. So yeah, Farhad, and I think that's all from my side. If the boys have any question to shoot, otherwise I have one last question that I want to ask Farhad.
Yeah, please go ahead, Ekta.
Go ahead, Ekta.
All right. So Farhad, this has been such a wonderful, wonderful evening with you, and we really enjoyed. And we are also reading The Other Man by Farhad, which is also our book of the month for LGBTQ literature, and we are celebrating Pride Month. So we are extremely happy that you all are reading this with us, and I'm sure now you would be discussing this with us as well. So thank you so much, Farhad. Any message that you would want to give, to the club, and anything that you
honestly, you all are doing a fantastic job. Y'all are my favorite book club. I think you all know that already. I stalk you all on Instagram also, which you all know about. But I love the Instagram sessions you all have through, every month, because it's so important to have honest conversations with authors, And I would just say that, keep spreading the love of books. It's so important. Books are really the last bastion of freedom that we have. It's really the last. Cinema's compromised. Theater, sure, maybe theater, but books is really the last place, and that needs to be protected, So for sure, just spread the joy of reading, spread the love of reading. And, I love this session is because I can see what, crazy book lovers you all are. Like, I can see you all sort of at a bookstore going through the corners and going through the books, which like a true book lover does, So that's really wonderful. I love meeting people who are passionate about books and who honestly love discussing books. So thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Farhad. It was so lovely talking to you.
Absolutely.
And we look forward to reading your next book, and also inviting you again to discuss about your next book and in more details. And I hope, all of you have enjoyed today's session. And also there is I wanted to just mention this, there is a section wherein we have a lot of LGBTQ books in our library, which are donated to us by Farhad. It is also called the Farhad's Library. So do check that out. And we are more than happy, to lend those books to you. So you can check them out and read. Those are some amazing hardcover books for people who, are okay that a book falls on your face while you're sleeping, so they hurt just like the literature does in that book. And it is so magnanimous and beautiful. So thank you, Farhad. Thank you for coming here and having this conversation with us. We're extremely happy about it, and happy Pride to all of you from Reader Kitab and all of us. And thank you. Have a great evening.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Thanks for spreading the queer joy.
I know. Queer joy, no trauma, just joy.
No trauma. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Farhad. Bye-bye.
Bye. See you.